What is up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in this video we're going to be doing a follow-up to my previous video on Stadio, Stable Diffusion, and Auto Quad 4. And in this one we're going to be improving some of the images that I created in the last video and where I demonstrated some of the features for doing small steps in improving images. And in this one, I'm going to be showing you guys how to take an image and to use the loopback feature, the scripting section in the image-to-image section here of the same interface to really ramp up the quality of the image that you're concerned with. So if you want to check out that other video, check out the playlist I have on AI on the channel, and see if you can just do a search for some of those keywords and you can see that long tutorial and getting started. Here's my link for Stadio, which is the web UI service interface for being able to work with Stable Diffusion and Auto Quad 4 at a really cheap rate as a managed service. So it's hi.getivan.com/Stadio. That'll give me a little attribution if you use my link, which I'd really appreciate. But if not, no worries. So let's dive into it. Here's my previous instance. So once you sign up to Stadio and you verify your email and what have you, you'll see a section for servers and models. You have to go to the models section and click one of these hearts to be able to activate or to see those options in your account for the models that you can load up into your server. The one that I like to use is Synthwave Punk. And then you can start the server. You don't need to have 2.1 activated. And it might take a minute for the pod to start up. Wait for that to completely start, pardon me, and to connect to it. And then once you do that, you'll come to the models section, refresh the page, and then there'll be a section where you can load up your model. So let's skip ahead to once my pod has warmed up. Okie dokie. So my pod is connected here, or it's not connected, but it's it's turned on. Then I want to refresh the page, go to models, and you'll see that a variety of things that are not loaded. And I'm going to click this to load this up and give it a minute to load up. You want to make sure it's fully loaded before you connect to your pod so that there won't be any glitches when you activate your model. Let's skip ahead to that point. Okay, so my model is loaded. It takes a couple minutes for that to happen. So if you do other models, just keep that in mind. It'll take a while for them to load. Then I'm going to go to the server tab and click connect. Oops, I'm going to control click that so that I can open that in another tab. Excuse me. And then the first things I want to do when I am just getting a new pod instance started is I want to go to settings and then the live previews and turn that preview off, the live previews of the created image off. Click apply settings, and then that'll do its thing. And then up here under the model section, you should see your model loaded. If you don't, go ahead and click that refresh button and then check again, and it should be there. And if this glitches, like if it flashes, then you need to go back to this screen and, pardon me, stop your server, then reconnect and do the same thing. And if it still gives you problems, terminate the server, start a new one, and then go through the whole process again. Sometimes, every once in a while, it'll glitch for me, but usually it does if it loads like that, it's good to go. And then what I like to do is click Reload UI just to make sure that things are working properly. You should see that activated, and under settings, the live preview should be saved. So once the pod has been activated, it'll continue to run in that manner, and then until you stop the server. So just remember, your credits are being consumed. Here's the credits down here. Your credits are being consumed while it's running. So you might want to stop that to preserve credits. So I'm going to come to my older instance here and copy over some of my prompts. And so this is my positive and negative prompts. And you can refer to my previous video if you want to learn about all the details in terms of why I use a variety of settings. But in this case, I'm just going to take a quick glance here at what I was working in yesterday, which is 150 sampling steps, 7 CFG, 0.4 denoising, or actually down here we'd be looking at the loop back. So the loop back, I had a ton of loops, and I had about 0.7. I did a lot of testing last night, and I found that about 0.5, 6, and 7 worked really well for the denoising strength at a high volume of steps. Loops, not steps, sorry. These are steps, the loops on those steps. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's what I want to demonstrate here. You can see an example of really heavy steps that I ran for 32. That's a pretty good one. So it's about 31 steps. That's a really good image right there, I think, for the style and the artists that we were using. This right, what it's doing is taking this image that I worked on for a few hours. So this is like my base image, and then it's using the loopback script to constantly feed that the subsequent image back into the process to create and refine that image. And basically after, so that one's a little wonky. There are certain periods where it looks a little wonky, but you have to kind of click through and see during the process which ones really stand out. I think that's a really good one. It's a little bit wonky there, but throughout some of these steps, and I call the weird ones in between, like this is a weird one. I call it molting. Like in between, it's the molting stage of the image development, So that's a really good one. Look at the paws. Look how clean the paws are. And a little bit impressionist down here, but a lot of great quality in colors and smooth in these other places. So that's a really good one. That would be 2, 1, 39, 8, 7, 6, 5. That's 25 steps right there. And I found I saw some good results. I tested it very thoroughly at like 6, 7, 8, 14, 20, 30, etc. So this is the kind of thing you can expect. Now, I'm going to go ahead and refeed. Let me show you. Let me see if my download section is. Let me open up my downloads. So there's an image here. This is time-stamped. There is an image here that should be zeros for me to be able to easily see it. And I want to show that to you guys so that you can see where we stopped. Here it is. So in my last video, this is where we stopped, and this is where I got it to after I stopped in that video. So I don't know if you can tell, but this one is a bit, it's a tiny bit more granulated, and there's certain artifacts throughout it, but it's still the core image. And it might not seem like a lot, but the main goal was to show you guys in the previous video how you could use this. You could come from a very basic image like we see here. If we take a look at some of these samples, I think I did some other tests, but like at the root of generating a prompt, these are the kinds of results that it generated. And of those, I picked one. These are ugly, kind of crude images, right? But the idea is you take a crude image and you work it and work it and work it in the image to image section, and then that I was able to use that process to get to an image of this state, right? And then in that last video, I worked through that process to eventually get to this state. So this one, you can see more colors. It's smoother. There are better defined features, and a little bit more detail on the stones and some of the environmental effects. And then I took that and I scaled up into the loopback process to get you know, some of these images which I was able to save. And that one's probably the star there. Let me see if I can save this. I think I already saved it. I think it's in one of these. But yeah, that one's one of the better ones. And let me just overwrite that so it's right there at the top. So now I could basically redo the entire process and show you guys with this root image, but I'd kind of like to let's maybe do one of those, but I don't want to take up too much time doing that. And then let's take some of the higher end step processed images and let's refeed that loopback process so that we can see how wild it can get. And let's also take a look at some of the images that we were able to create there yesterday. So this is the one I just saved. There's a pretty good one. That's the I think that's the 30th step or so in the previous generation I was showing you. Sorry, having all kinds of technical annoyances. Okay, it's a decent one. That's a pretty good one. That's a little bit odd, but see that's a really neat one. That was probably from my 20-step one, and you're always going to get a more sophisticated image the more steps you go into and the more you go into loops. But sometimes you land on what, like I described before, a molting phase where it's in the process of hitting the right, you know, sweet spot, but you didn't hit it, you didn't time it correctly. So that's one of the reasons it's better to see a range of images so that you can see where, okay, the program was going towards this, you know, particular place and it just didn't get to go all the way there. But if you compare steps and loops, you'll always see, like compare this to, let's go back up here. Let me see, where was that image? It's not that one or that one or that one. It's that one right there. Like, if you look really closely and you compare this one to this one, like there are way more sophisticated colorations and textures, and so there's some like smearing back here, but particularly in, you know, in the cat itself, it's way more sophisticated in certain ways. Like over here, you can see certain features in the stone, but then there's like, see how granulated it is there. Like there are certain lesser features in this area, and one of the challenges with doing image to image is when you're only going at partial percentages, you're only letting the program change it in steps. So the areas where it creates the variation by a percentage, it's essentially random each time according to what the computer decides. So it's a numbers game, but it's one where you get to go in there and select the ones that ideally meet your criteria, and then you can take this and run it through a loopback feature and get an even higher quality result. So anyways, let's look at some of the other ones. That's a pretty nice quality one. There's some really great stone texture ones there. And so any one of these that has a great look and feel, you can take those and feed it back through the program to get a higher output image. This one almost looks like a real cat. Look at that one. That's really interesting. Look at the textures there. And that was at a lower level of steps. That one also almost looks like a real cat. Not that that's necessarily what I was going for. That one also. That was probably at the 14 phase. There was one cat I remember that was extremely realistic, and we haven't seen it yet. That's really pretty. Rainbow beard. But you can see, like, look at the face. It's a lot less developed. Some of these characteristics back here are less developed. But up here at the wood, it's more developed. So the program is very select. There's a really realistic looking cat. The program is very selective with what it chooses to lean into. The overall goal is we want the entire image to be as intricate and detailed and rich as possible, and that takes a large amount of subsequent and layered processing, and that's the purpose of the loopback feature. And if you're confused and you miss, I basically already explained what you do, and in a moment here I'm going to demonstrate it. That's not bad. Oh, that's a pretty one. But we could choose any of these, really. Ooh, that's a really nice one. I really like that one. We could choose any of these and go into the loopback feature even for that. That's pretty wild. If you're wondering, the text that I used here was resting Maine Coon cat in a paradise garden with rainbows. And so it's a real kind of, that one kind of reminds me of the cat from Thundercats, you know, one of the sidekick comedic relief creatures or whatever, you know. Uh, that's a pretty one. It's a cute one right there. It's that one's a cute. Let's see that one. That's a nice one, but you notice how that one's closer to our original image. The higher up we go into the denoising factor here, which is this variable, it will move a little bit further away, and that's why we're getting slightly different cats. And that's one of the difficulties about staying as close to the original image as possible, because when you do that, it makes it more difficult for that loopback feature to create variations. I've noticed. Now, if you keep that variable low, oftentimes it will work into the same criteria, and it can kind of make it crunchy or low quality. This is one of the last ones we left off with that was pretty good, and then there's just some other odd samples. But let's use the last one we saved, because that's one of the most advanced ones, and he's actually laying on top of a rainbow, which I thought was kind of cool. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's crank this up let's go to image. I'm going to drop the image in there and crank this up to 150 at 7. And let's go to the script and turn on the loopback feature. And then we'll go to, how many loops? Let's try 14. And then let's go ahead and, I can't decide if, which one of these is better. Let's try 5 just to see how that, actually let's do 6. Let's do 6 and see how it does at 14. And we don't need to change anything else. Actually, do I want to do, no, I don't. You don't want to do a batch here on the loopback, because it'll only give you, in the batch count, it'll only give you the final output for each of those batches. So we don't want to do that. We want to see the entire string. So everything else, the denoising, the CFG is correct, so we don't need to mess with anything else. We should be, oh, I'm sorry. I got to make sure to copy the prompt over here. I apologize for the build-up. I just wanted to show you guys, give you guys a history of what I was doing there. And generate. And the first one, it usually takes a little longer. Let me skip ahead to the output. Oh man, we are seeing some rich results here. This is great stuff. Take a look at that. That's just the first cook. I'm coming up with my whole terminology, my whole lingo here for all this stuff. Look at that. I mean, look at the difference. Some of this is a little multy, a little wobbly, but like the paw there. But look at the face. Look at some of the details there. That's pretty nice. I'm gonna say, I don't know what I'm gonna do with all these, but I'd save them anyways. That's a good one. Look at the eyes, and then the beard there. Some of this other stuff is weaker, but let's move on. That's a molting phase, but look how clear the face is. You know, it's a little bit flat, but that's okay. That's a molting phase, molting. Ooh, there's some nice features there. That's molting. Oh, actually, you know what? The paws are really fuzzy there. Great green eyes. A little bit of oddity, but look at the impressionist style on the trees there. If you really leaned into that style, it could be really pretty. And then the last one, this man is a rainbow necklace. So it's interesting, the difference there. Where did we sit? We sat at 6, right? 6 and 14. Let's kick it up to 7. And let's jump up to, let me think. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump up to 20. I mean, why not? And skip ahead. Now, this is the same seed image, but that's that's okay by me. I mean, I think this can produce some great results. So let's skip ahead. Okay, let's take a look at what we have. We have some pretty promising images so far. It looks like this is a pretty neat one. And when I was looking at this range, look at the colors. It goes from like a black scheme, and it leans into a purple scheme, and then it goes off into some rainbow. It's pretty interesting. So you can really see the the trail that the AI is following in develop. Look at that blank stare. That's a great one, actually. I gotta save that one. Look at that. It's like it has gone from environmental into really flat colors on the outside, but on the principal image there, look at the difference in the details of the fur. You see that? There are clear, it's like brush strokes here and a little bit of spackling on the paws, but then look over here. It's a lot finer in terms of the detail. You can really see lighting effects in this cat's face. So that's pretty interesting. Let me save this one. That's a promising one. Let's actually go back to the glance here. There's so many good ones now. Oh man, we're getting into some very austere, almost epic styles. They tried to simulate a a signature there. And just to clarify, no signatures are being stolen here. It's just the AI sees that in certain images, and it's creating an impression of a signature. But obviously, this is an image I've developed through dozens of loopbacks. So I just want to make that clear. This is an original image. But look at the sort of epic dark mood of this particular cat's face, and look at the paws, look at the lighting effects, and look down here. Look at there's dimension in this sort of, it's almost like a rug. So that's pretty interesting. That's a really nice image. Maybe worth saving, but some of these up here are getting real epic. That one's good. It's a little bit excessively saturated though, but it has it's still pretty awesome. That one's pretty neat too. Let me save that one. So this was it point, yes, 0.7 and 20 steps. I almost want to do maybe 0.6 and 32 steps or so to see how it does. But let's maybe 7, maybe 20 steps and 0.6 to just maybe lessen some of that saturation. But it's hard to tell because if it leans into it further, it might be okay. Anywho, so we saved some good ones from that. Let's do another round. Let's go up into 32 and let's leave it at 7. Let's see how far it'll take it in another variation, and hit the go button and skip ahead. Okay, let's see what we got. Some of the first generations looking good. This one looks pretty good. A little bit weak back here. Really nice paws though. Some nice features here. Let me save that one. That one's really pretty. Let me look at the gradient. Some dark colors here, some bright colors, then it gets dark again, and real dark, real saturated. Let's take a look there. See, isn't that interesting? Like, that's heavy molting right there. Like, you could easily be doing generations on specific settings and land right on one of these two and think, man, this is just not going to work. But a few more steps in from these seeds, and it's like, oh my gosh, wow, the quality just jumped up to another level. Like, so you can't really see that unless you do progressive I don't know, seed stacking, or they call it loops. So you have to use the loopback feature in order to get this kind of quality. And like I said in the last video, there are all these guys talking about, oh, there's nothing like Midjourney. Midjourney is the holy grail of, the image generation. No, it's not. It's Stable Diffusion with Auto quad one or whatever they call it, and learning how to use the features and using the loopback feature, etc., etc. Like, this is where it's at. You can't create nearly this many images at scale with Midjourney because they have a very limited quantity of credits that you can access. That's a pretty seed. They even have a little fruit there. So something like this, the next video is going to be animations with our cat. We're going to have our cat, licking its paw or something like that, as cats do. So that's going to be the next iteration here. So we're looking for a high quality Maine Coon cat for the next step in the phase. In some interesting directions. You can run this over and over also, and it's not going to be the same yield, because it's going to be different variations. Remember, whenever it starts creating, it goes to create a regular image using this denoising feature and CFG and steps. So it's like it uses these steps, right? It uses these three features to create one image. And then it takes that image and uses the same settings to create the next one and the next one. And it does that 30 times. So every time you create a new image, you are creating, a different set of seeds, subsequent seeds that it's going to play off of. So it's going to be different every single time. Excuse me. Let's look at some of the final ones because I'm curious if it's getting. Oh, see, that one has some really promising features. That's really interesting. Let me save that one. That's a nice one. So none of those are quite what I was looking for. Wondering if 7 might be too high, or if maybe 6, or if we should just go ahead and pick a new seed and then run with it. Let's go ahead and pick a seed from the ones that we've selected. So we saved several today. This is the one from before. And we have some of these. That one's really pretty, but this is kind of an aberration here. Oops, is it going backwards? That's actually a really good image. And that one is good too. That one's really good also. Some really great environmental effects. And that's one of the that's the one I just saved, I guess. That could be really good too. Let's either do this one or let's do that one's actually really good too. It's a little hunky-dory down here, but it's okay. It's still pretty cool. That one's got some great features. Let's go ahead and do this one. So let me grab that one. Actually, let's blow this up real quick because I want to compare this to the other image just so that I can drive home what we're seeing here. Oops. So that is the seed. And I think it's really clear because it's really hard for folks to tell are the subsequently looped back features and higher steps, are they really better images or are they just wild permutations? And what I'm trying to drive home to folks is that they are more sophisticated images. It's difficult to tell because of the details at a distance. And when you look at this, you can see some things that sort of seem like they're better features on this image, but when you compare them, like look at the spackling on the paws. That's a nice feature, but look at these paws. Look at how fuzzy they are. Look at how furry they are. And some of these flowers, they're a little hunky-dory. It's kind of similar down here. There's a little bit more going on, but There's also some flat panes, here. There's a little bit more details here and up in here, but mainly the details that we see are focused around the cat itself and the fur. So I would argue that is a higher quality image. And one of the areas where it's really difficult to tell is actually the shadows and the depth of, I guess it's the depth of field, the lighting features. That's really kind of hard to tell at a glance, but if you lean back, you can really see that this one over here has a lot more depth in the fur detail and higher contrast and saturation, and it's a higher quality image, but it's hard to tell, you know. But that's what we're going for. We're creating a higher and higher and higher quality image in a large variety of steps, right? So let's take this one, dial it down to 14 and to 0.6, just out of curiosity to sort of see how that does, and skip ahead to it. Okay, let's take a look. We got some promising candidates here from a glance, from a distance, but you can kind of see where some of them are kind of in a molting phase. We dialed down the denoising and also the number of loops, and I think you can kind of see where the quality is a bit lower than some of the more sophisticated looping jobs we've run. We can see higher saturation, which actually begins to bleed out as we process it at a lower, as it continues to process at lower values. So it's pretty interesting. That's actually a really good one. Look at the pause there. It's kind of hard to tell. This stuff here is better. This rainbow is a lot better than this one over here. Better flowers over here. More structured pedestal here. There's a little bit of aberration in the eye there. Some detail in the whiskers. And some detail here in the ears. That one, it's one step better in a variety of ways. But anyways, that's a pretty one. That one might be worth saving. Let's save that one. That's a molting. That one's got some kind of epic features, but it's a little multi. No. Oh, that's nope. No. So that actually got kind of worse, didn't it? Let's keep dying. Let's keep it on the 0.7, and let's try 20 again, and then we'll go to 32 and see how we do. Let's skip ahead. Okay, let's take a look at some cats. That's a nice one. A little bit, kind of similar to some of the other developments that we had before. You can see a little bit more detail here. Actually, there's some good features here. A little more detail in the environment over here, maybe. But let's take a look at some of these on the range. So we have more saturated colors, kind of bleeds out, and then kind of turns back in. That's interesting. So let's look at the grid view. See what we can spot. That one has some promise. Actually, how many steps is this? 20? This wasn't a very good yield for this particular generation. That one's not bad. Oh, hey, that's an interesting one. Huh. That one's not bad either. Sparkle. Might be a good word to include in there, sparkle. Sparkling resting Maine Coon cat in a sparkling paradise garden with rainbows. Maybe we'll add some sparkle later on. So this one actually seemed promising. Let's do one more generation, and then we'll pick one from that sequence, and we'll do one more, and then we'll end it there. And in the next video, I'll be seeing what we can do about an animated short with that. And and stay tuned to see what I do with all this, because it's going to be really interesting. So let's bump this up to 32. And I don't think I saved any. Did I say? I don't think I saved that one. I didn't save any with this one. Yeah, because we didn't really have any good opportunities. Let's generate and skip ahead. Oh man, I am liking the look of this yield so far. So we're on 32 loops, 7.7 denoising. Look at some of these outputs that we're getting here. Let's take a look at the scale. Oh man, look, it goes from this color scheme, almost like a purplish, grayish, purplish. Then it would have a greenish grayish, and then we're getting some flairful colors in here, and then boom, at the end we're seeing a full blown some rainbows come up. So this is exciting stuff. I gotta save that one. Some paw problems there, but really pretty colors. Some great fur here. Even more detail down in the environmental factors. Let's save that one. And then some of these other ones. Ooh, that one's got great paws. Check out the paws on that cat. But let's save that one. That's a good. So I think the eyes are a little bit lacking there, but it's nice. That one's got some text artifact there. This one looks nice too. A little bit scraggly in some areas, pardon me. That one's a little bit multi. Oopsie. And then we get into some odd ones. That one has some nice features. This one almost has some antennas. That's a little strange. Let's move on though. That one looks... it's not quite finished, not quite rendered. Ooh, man. There's some great features here, but some random artifacts crept in. Oh, wow. I'm not even sure what's going on there, but there's some neat stuff. This cat is clothed in a rainbow there. That's a nice one. There's some nice flowers there, actually. Let me save that one. That one's got some merit. That one could be good if it's scaled. That one's got some great features. Well, some problems in the eyes, actually. Never mind. Hey, there you go. Great features there. Ooh. Look at that one. That one's rich. That might be the winner right there. Let's save that one. And look at the final ones. This is 31, and then this is 32. Oh, man. It's hard to, it gets real tough to tell. The further down you go, there's some artifacts there, unfortunately. But you can see, like, if we compared, was it this one? Or was it the next one? Yeah, I mean, you compare these two, and you can, I mean, back here, it's obviously pretty straight, but there's, well, actually, no, it's kind of hard to say, because it's, some things are better and some things are worse. You can see spackling down here, though, a little bit. The paws are better here. There's a lot of great features. Let's go ahead and pick one, though, as the next seed. We seem to be getting a really strong outputs by sticking to 7 denoising and hitting those 32 waves. That seems to really be giving us a good yield, but it's hard to tell. It would be great if there was some sort of script or program I could run these through that could empirically tell me which image has more, detail and sophistication, so that I wouldn't have to try to eyeball it every time, That'd be a great part of a plugin also in the Auto Quad 4 interface, so that I could see, so that we could absolutely have the software picking the most significant outputs. So these are the newest ones, I think. These are the ones. Well, these might all be. No. Well, wait a second. It must have done it like this, and then I just saved this older one a second ago, and you can tell, like, this is where we started, and this is where we went to, and then you can see from a distance the dynamic lighting and the sort of epic look and feel of a lot of the new ones, you know. So it's kind of hard to tell. We picked this one. So since then, we've generated these two, and then I saved this one, and then these. So let's look at this. It should go. Okay, it goes backwards. So this would be one. That's a good image. And then that one, and then I resaved this one because I need to do a thumbnail. That's a really good image. That one has some nice features, but now the eyes aren't as good. Let me delete that one. That one is good too. The flowers are nice. Let's keep going though. Ooh. Yeah, I might have to settle on the higher end. It's really tough to tell though, isn't it? It gets really difficult to tell, but some of the dynamics are so rich that it's hard for me to say no. Like that's the furthest stepped one, but I don't know, that one's really good. Both of these they're really similar, but let's do this one because we have a gradient here. So let me close this out and let me drop this one into this section, and let's run this one more time, and then we'll call it quits for this video. Let's skip ahead. Oh man, our cats are starting to look super realistic. Let's take a look at the gradient here. Looks super saturated. Tons of rainbow. Looks like it bleeds out a little bit, so we'll have to see how this does. Might have cooked it a little bit too much. So, yeah, the cat's looking way too realistic for the style. There's a lot of it's too much exposure there. But it's interesting, right? Like the more that you allow the AI to work on it, it just keeps getting more. It leans into the more realistic stuff. Tends to be. Let's see. That one's super exposed. And we're kind of going back into the style. It's getting a little funky here at this level. I'm getting real cooking a little bit. Man, look at how it kind of went backwards even. Now the cat it's not even in a garden, it's just surrounded by rainbow mist. So we kind of have a standard there where we're seeing that we overcooked. And so to correct that, we can obviously see differences between the past iterations and this one's really high quality stuff at a great style. So in order to correct that, what you got to do is you got to dial down the denoising strength. Don't let it cook so heavily. Maybe we can still try this at 32. Let's do one more iteration because I was hoping we could really polish up this style. We'll do one more iteration here at 32, but you do have to tweak this. This is what it's all about. You just have to sit there and tweak this. And it's too bad there's not a way to to do this with the XY prompting feature, because that's in the script section, the XY plotting feature, I mean, because it'd be so much easier to run it at variations so that we could make certain choices. Now, it does have new features in the updated version of the script, and I'm not exactly sure, because when I use these independently, it sometimes causes glitches. So just a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on every facet of any of this stuff, but I've done enough to be able to know that it takes, you have to do this stuff in steps. Now, one thing that occurred to me is that you could do batches, and it'll give you the final outputs for each of those batches. So it'll take more processing time, but you can, walk away and work on something else, and then come back and see, if there is a batch that's giving you a better iteration that isn't necessarily going backwards. Now, see, actually, that one is not too bad. I think I already clicked on some of these, though. Some of these are really hyper realistic, but right about there, maybe it's a little closer to kind of what we were going for previously, in that sort of epic, deep, digital painting style. Okay, anyways, let's run this and skip ahead. Okay, let's take a look at what we are getting at this point. So this first one had some promise, had some artifacts though in the eye there, some great features though in other areas. Look at some great texture there at the base, preserving some of the other great things over here. There might be better fur features over here though, but it's clearly a transitional image. And so let's take a look here. Looks like darker colors going forward, leaning into photographs again, which is not my preference for this particular project. Some of these are interesting though. Let's see. I much prefer it when it fills out the whole environment, but there's some neat styles. That's a neat one. It seems to be leaning into, man, this one's really leaning into some line art styles. So that was a very different direction that the AI took. It went from epic digital painting to realistic photographs to line art. So that's curious. Well, I think I'll probably try to do one more iteration, but before I do, I'll re-upload this in a moment. I do want to show you guys, before I let you go, let me see. I want to show you that when you add an image here and let me turn off the loopback, and you change the dimensions, it will fill in the rest of the area. So I don't remember if it'll do it on 0. I might have to put this to 10% denoising or something, but let me grab, I forget sometimes how many, I have let me see here, a reference thing. Let me do video thumbnails. Don't remember the exact pixel. It's 1280 by 720. I don't think I need to do it at that ratio though. I have it written down somewhere, and I need to. Let me go check my reference real quick. Okay, so this is saying that 4K is 3840 and 2160. So I have it notated another way elsewhere. So, but I wanted to show you guys that 4K is just 4 times this like base resolution. So if you do 3840 divided by 4, it's 960, and then 2160 divided by 4 is 540. So when we go into our software, we want to do 540 height, right? And then 960 width. So I don't know if I can do this at 0. Let's try this. CFG shouldn't matter. This was at 12 before, but this shouldn't matter when I got to this particular image. But so you don't want the script turned on here. I should be able to hit the button. It might not actually work because the rest of it's going to generate. Yeah, it's not going to work that way. It's just going to stretch. So I need to do 10% maybe. Let's try this. And then I need to bump this up to 12. And let's see what this will do. It might not generate the other stuff to quality because our other features, yeah, it's just going to stretch it. I'm trying to remember, you can take the image and modify it very slightly, and there are other features for outpainting, poor man's outpainting in MK2, but I haven't really messed with them that much. What I usually do, you don't want to do resize and before I just did resize. It might actually be resize and fill. I apologize. I haven't had to readjust this in a couple of weeks because I've been working with these square images. But let's try denoising at 0 again and reprocess this. And if it fills it, it might do no. It's just giving us a horror story. Let's try it at 10%. I'm trying to avoid doing it too much denoising because I don't want to change the principal image here for the thumbnail. So we'll have to see what it does for us. Yeah, you see, even at 10%, it changed the image there a surprising bit. And I'm trying to think if the in painting could be used, because we can actually use the in painting feature to go outside of the principal image, but I don't think that's going to work for us, unfortunately. Shoot. Let me try crop and resize, just resize. I don't want to tinker with the out painting right now. Let's just try this at 7 and hope that this doesn't get twisted up too much at 5 here. Should only take 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Actually, it probably will affect. It'll affect the cat. Shoot. Let me skip ahead until I have a way of doing this that it doesn't affect the main image at all, and I forgot what it was. Let me skip ahead here. Okay, so that took me a minute to figure out. What a pain. So I think the reason that I haven't had to do this before is because usually when I vet an image, in the image to image section, I will do it at 512. And then once I find a variation, right, and once I find a path, like I carve either the prompt or I'm, building out into an image, then what I will often do is I will kick it up to different dimensions. Depending on the project, obviously these are thumbnail dimensions that you can scale up by 2 or 4 or whatever. And pardon me. So once usually I think when I do that, I change the dimensions and then I populate. And that's why I've never had to face this exact problem, which is that I want to retain this exact image, but also outpaint into those other areas. So I went ahead and I was testing the other ways that I've normally done it, but it was changing the principal image and that wasn't working. So it wasn't working. So that was a weird kind of use case that I just ran into there. But, because normally you'd probably want to populate those loops at scale so that you won't have to deal with this problem. But good news is I figured out a whole other process just now I can share with you guys to solve this if you want to generate your large scale permutations in the 512 so that it's faster, and then you can do a smaller number of permutations using the in-painting feature with the XY plot denoising to allow you to see a gradient that's going to let you pick the exact right image, the exact right denoising factor. So I know it's a bunch of mess, but what I did is I cut the prompt out for the cat in this case, and for the in-painting section. And I just said that the landscape that's going to be around the cat, right? So it's just paradise garden with rainbows. And then in the in-painting section, I sent the image over into the in-painting section. And what this lets you do is it lets you paint in certain areas that you want to change. You can either do the exact area that you want to change or the inverse of the area that you want to change. This is really good if you have a great image that you want to use and there's like a signature generation or something, you can color over it and you can have it, fill that area in so it's seamless. But it's also good for correcting other random artifacts. And in this case, what I did is kind of ghetto because I tested the scripts for the outpainting, but they glitched and I was getting like errors. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I figured out this way, which is to just do the masks on the sides of the image where you're missing. So this is pretty ghetto, but check this out. For the image to image area, what I did is I turned the denoising to 0, and then I hit the go button, and it just painted awful lines on the sides, right? So it expanded to the image dimensions, but it just had nonsense text. It just had nonsense over here. That was the only purpose of it, to expand the image handling area, right? And then in the in-painting, when I sent that over to the in-painting section, then I tinkered around in these settings, and here's what worked. First, you got to kick this mask blur up to 64, resize and fill, and in-paint masked. So you want to in-paint in the masked area, obviously. You want to fill the masked content. You want to in-paint the area that is only the masked content, right? I guess you could technically do the whole picture. I didn't test that. So I wonder if you did the whole picture, if it would maybe blend those edges better, but it doesn't super matter because as you can see from this image, it does a pretty seamless job of blending, as far as I can tell at least. Anyways, so I need to test this in a minute here. We'll see. I think it'll mess up all this other stuff too, but anywho, in paint, mask content fill, in paint the whole picture. No, I don't think that would work properly when I think about it, because it might permutate. Well, I need to test that and see what happens. But yeah, so anyways, I did the only masked and then only masked padding pixels of 64. Now I tested a variety of ranges here and a bunch of things up and down. 64 to 64 seems to have accomplished what I was trying to do, and there are several phases. And fortunately, I had the XY plotter, or this would have taken me a lot longer. But same settings as usual, all this other stuff. Now, I did a couple of batches so I could see what I was doing, and the XY plot, the main ones that seemed to work consistently were 0.5 and 0.6. And actually, as a side note, when I kicked this up to 0.78 and 1.0 with other things cranked up, the amount of detail this thing was spitting out was pretty wild. It was a very high level of detail that was not typical of some of the other environments that we've been seeing. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe a way to go in and augment things, then feed it back over to the image to image and continue looping it out, So another diabolical scheme to test at some point. But anyways, here are let me refresh this. Here are some of the examples. So is this the older one or I can't remember which one this was. So this is one of the first ones I did with a bunch of settings cranked. And you can see there's a bit of a line there. There's an obvious line here. that's pretty well blended right there. And then there's an obvious line here where you can see actually some of the in painting was doing better quality for a lot of this stuff when you take a step back. So that was one of the first things I tried. Where's the arrow here? Now this is where I started to use the XY plotter. Now check this out. 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. And as you get higher up, you get even less blurring, but there's still a stark line in some of those. And actually, the rainbows that they're putting out there are much higher quality. So the in painting thing really needs to be tested. But in order to match the previous image to my older video, because that's what I'm going to use for a thumbnail right now, the one that caught my attention was, this 0.5 variation there, because the other ones were not really close to that. Now, there's only two variations, and it's possible that it could output in other areas. But anyways, that's what I ran with. And I did some other tests, and this was, I think, another 0.5 that I tested. There's some blurring over here, but you can see where the lines are pretty much seamless. So I'm just showing you guys the phases that I went through to test this stuff. And then here's another example. A little bit closer, a little bit of blurring here and here. And is that the last one? I think that might be the last one. Let's take a look. Oops. No, that's not the last one. This is the last one, though. This was a 0.5 and 0.6 sample. And you can see the 0.6 is just not cutting it. It's really 0.5 that does what it needs to do. And this stuff over here is not blurring. It's just some sort of like tree trunk thing that they rendered. But it seems to be doing... There's a little bit of aberration in that region there. But I think it's a lot more seamless than it was before. And there's even some quality stuff going on in the image. So it might need some fine tuning. But let's go ahead and turn off the XY plotter because we don't need to plot for denoising. What I really need to do. And unfortunately, I couldn't test for these other factors in the XY plotter because the script didn't contain features for the in painting variables. At least from what I could see, I didn't spot anything like that. So I'm pretty sure that this is correct, but I might need to do a little bit of tweaking here. Let's go ahead though and generate 6 of these in a batch at 0.5. And I think the other settings are all good to go. We just need to see if we can land on one that's ideal. So let's go ahead and hit the button on this, and then we can skip ahead to the final result. Okay, let's take a look at some of these cats. So we've got a little bit of excess blurring maybe on some of these. It's odd that there's straight lines in some of those. Don't quite get why that is. It should be consistent since we're generating a batch here. It shouldn't be progressive. That's better, but we still see lines. That's better. Some of that is nonsense. No. We got it right on some of this stuff, but let me see if I can make some adjustments here. Let me skip ahead and see if we can figure out the right combination of stuff. See, this is good, but right here is where it gets a little wonky. Let me skip ahead while I tinker with this again. Okay. That took way longer than I expected, but man, I really figured this out, guys. So this in-paint feature, it has a lot of ways that can be configured. The tricky part is the mask blur and the mask padding. There's some interesting ways where you can lower these values, and you can sort of direct the kinds of details that the software will fill in based on how you do that in terms of their simplicity or complexity. But for this purpose, I said, hey, once I did enough testing, I found that you do, in order to get the greatest blend possible with a lot of details, you really want to put this at max value, this at max value. And then I did some more test XY testing on denoising values, and I found that 0.6 actually provided a slightly higher quality value. And when I added more in painting to this piece, not just, where there's clear straight lines, when I added it, it really created a pretty strong blend. So as you can see, it's pretty much seamless, very difficult to tell. There might be, if you looked really close, you could maybe tell where, okay, there's a little bit of smoothing in this area here. And, some of this stuff is just, you can't tell really, essentially. It's, you can consistently place the same core object in a variety of different scenes using this feature. So it is really awesome. And, I generated a batch of 6 pretty quickly here, and I just need to pick one of these, probably this one, because this one gives a lot of nice features and there's a lot of great blending all throughout. I had some trouble where part of this eyebrow, this, what do you call this, ear brow or whatever, was getting cut off, so I couldn't mask as much of this section as I wanted to, but it still seems to be masked pretty well. So, and I tried to mask this area, but for some reason it wasn't getting picked up. Sometimes you have to check this. You have to be careful. Let me refresh this. When you're in a session for a long time, there's a default timeout setting. You have to contact support to get them to extend it. So sometimes you can time out and not realize it, but usually the instance will tell you we can't connect. So sometimes you have to watch out for that. And if that happens, all you have to do is reconnect. And in some cases, you might have to reapply your settings, but just be aware of that. Anyways, so this is a pretty good image. I think I'll save this one. And I saved some other ones to show you guys some of the outputs I was able to generate. So starting here, this was an interesting one here because, as you can see, there's a lot of great details, and it just didn't quite mesh together in previous iterations. Oh, that's the wrong direction. I think I showed you guys this one, and I think this was at 0.5, but the problem is that the blurring is kind of low quality. You really have to crank up the pixels. And then when you do that, though, if the lines are too straight, it'll be kind of obvious. Oh, and this is a key thing. I forgot to mention this. I did figure out that you don't want only mask activated in the in-paint area. You do want the whole picture. It handles it a lot better for some reason. So keep that in mind also. Whole picture is a must-have. I tested this feature also, original and latent noise and such. And you do want fill here, but whole picture is essential if you want it to be really blended together, And I think I already looked at that one. This was a really good one, I thought, because there's some really great effects here. And I started from this point later on when I had to restart my pod, or not my pod, I had to reconnect because I timed out from having such a long session. And this is the one that I worked off of, and there were some issues for some reason getting the mask to pick this up, so I had to kind of go into the fur. But the software is doing a pretty good job of not cutting the fur off too sharply. So anyways, so this is a really good one, I think. But I noticed that I needed to add more mask to this section. So, but you can see there's a lot of great colors and a lot of great blending and so on and so forth. So that's a great iteration. Same thing. It was similar here, but you can see there's some water feature issues. And then I think I just saved this one. Yeah. So this would be the final iteration. So that's the one that I'll be adding as my thumbnail to the first video. And then in the next, in just a second here, I'm going to open up, I guess it was this picture, right? this picture, I might do some more work on. I need to go back and look at some of those high quality images, but that'll be the thumbnail for this video. And then in the next video, I'll be tinkering with the animation feature, seeing what we can do there. I haven't worked on that in a while, but anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful for you guys in terms of seeing the power of the loopback feature, and also the power of in painting, and what you can do to generate a variety of scenes using that feature, and also to help you to blend certain images and create extend the landscape for maybe for smaller aspect ratio pieces that you're working on. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget the link to this service, Stadio, is below the video, hi.getivan.com/Stadio. Thanks, guys. Catch you later. Bye-bye.